Now, live from Whitney Media, 1460 WVOX, the Greenburgh Report with Greenburgh Town Supervisor Paul Feiner. You can join in the conversation at 914-636-0110. Now on 1460 WVOX, here's Greenburgh Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Good morning, Westchester. I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenburgh Town Supervisor, and I thought for the first show that I have after the Democratic primary, I'd invite my guest to be Tasha Young. She was my competitor in the recent primary. Democracy depends on contested elections. We had a good race, and Tasha came up with some great ideas, and we're working together now on implementing some of the suggestions she had. So, Tasha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Supervisor. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Could you maybe tell us just a little bit about your background just to start the program?
Certainly. My current position is Chief of Staff for a council member in New York City Council who is also the majority leader. And what that means is that she takes leadership role next to the speaker for all decisions that are made in the city council. So I run both of her offices, and we have a staff, and I oversee the budget department, the legislative department, the constituent services department, as well as land use. So, and before that, I spent a number of years just drafting legislation, being a citizen lobbyist, and before that, management and social work.
What's the difference between New York City politics and, say, Westchester politics?
Wow, I've gotten quite the education. That's a great question. So in New York City, the executive branch is completely separate from the legislative branch, similar to our state government. So you have, the mayor, current mayor is Mayor de Blasio, and then you have a 51-member legislative body. And they're independent of one another to the extent that the legislative body passes the laws. Of course, the executive body can always, pass executive orders. But really, it's meant to be sort of a checks and balance and a meeting of the minds, so to speak, convergence. Because once the legislation is introduced, the legislative body does work with the executive branch, and sometimes there's some negotiation back and forth, probably similar to how you operate on the town board. But there is more of a distinction between the two bodies. And what I've noticed in Westchester, in Greenburgh specifically, is the executive, which would be the office of the supervisor, your office. You have the agencies report to you, or the departments in the city. There are agencies, and there are dozens of agencies: NYPD, FDNY, and the like, right? And then so they report to you as the supervisor, which is the same as in New York City. The mayor appoints commissioners and the like. But the difference that I see in town government is that the supervisor is also part of the legislative process. So you are also have a vote on the board. So that is a big, that's a big distinction to me. And there are some other things. And
in Greenburgh, the executive doesn't have the power to hire, fire, veto legislation. So it's really a very weak executive. And in New York City, the mayor has much more power.
I would say so. That I think I wouldn't use the term weak, but it's definitely different. It's more symbiotic in the town, where the board is a 5-member board with the supervisor, where in New York City it's very different, very distinct.
That was great. How many years have you been involved in politics? I know you've been very involved in the progressive, movement in Westchester. Were you always an activist?
Yeah, so, like many others, with the election of the last president and President Trump, I got very, very active in local politics as well as city and state politics. Before then, I was just a lowly grant writer, supervisor. I just wrote grants. And as my role as director or social worker, we implemented policy. So, the laws would come down and the budget would come down, and then we would have to implement the policy. But once that election happened...
We have to take a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back with Tasha Young. And then we're going to discuss an initiative we're working on, a co-op initiative in 5 minutes. So stay tuned. I'm Paul Feiner, Greenburgh Town Supervisor.
Now, back to the Greenburgh Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenburgh Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Good morning, Westchester, and I'm Paul Feiner, the Greenburgh Town Supervisor, and my guest this morning is Tasha Young. And Tasha and I are working on an exciting new initiative. We're trying to set up a co-op and a grocery store or supermarket in the Fairview section of Greenburgh. Tasha, could you explain what a co-op is?
Certainly. I will tell you what I know about it. We are on the verge of doing something that has been done in surrounding municipalities in New York City, but also in upstate New York, where the residents are actually owners in a business venture, and in this example, a food co-op or supermarket. So this is owner-operated and resident-owned, if you will. So what we're doing is we're looking into governmental resources, private resources that look to fund initiatives that help people where they live participate in their own commerce, in their own industry, in their own businesses. So residents in the and stop me if I'm over talking, Mr. Supervisor. But this is opportunity for residents to have a say in how the business that they patronize is run, because they will be the owners as well as the consumers and neighbors.
And what's really exciting about this is it's an opportunity to replace vacant storefronts with vibrant businesses that people in the community want to see serve them.
Which is so important. Coming out of COVID-19, we really do need to put all of our heads together on how to best address the vacant storefronts and the economic downturn that families experienced. So, this is a great opportunity. When you let more people into the process of how their community is shaped and what it looks like, it really does produce the best results. And we'll get those storefronts filled, and it will be with the input of the community and with the vibrance and brilliance of what they want.
Why is a supermarket so needed in the Fairview section of the town of Greenburgh?
Great question. So I've lived in Greenburgh 38 of my 49, almost 50 years. And I remember growing up in the Fairview section, whether it would be attending daycare center or going to church or going to the community center. And it was so vital to have a supermarket at the then in the Crossroads Shopping Center, because many people don't drive. So for those who were maybe young families just starting out, or seniors, or people that had mobility issues, or just, didn't drive for whatever the reasons were, they had the benefit of walking to get their food. And, I'll be honest with you, I remember seeing shopping carts go back up and down Manhattan Avenue, because people, needed to have their food source local and close to them. And when we lost the two supermarkets, I know there was a great outcry. Was what will we do now? So I'm fortunate enough, and probably a lot of your listeners and yourself, we have vehicles. But for people who don't, it's very important that they have food available in walking distance or on public transportation. because, as you know, when you do a big shop, you need to be able to transport that food back. So if you don't have a car, you need something that's fairly local. So it's very vital to the community. And once we pull this off, I'm not going to say if, once we create this food co-op, we are then addressing the issue of a food desert that is now the case in Fairview, in that section of Fairview.
I would want to give a shout-out to Delia Marks, who came up with the idea. I was at a meeting of Westpac. They were honoring her a couple months ago, and she was talking about the need for food co-ops, and then we started working with Westpac, and you got involved, and I think that it's starting to fall into place. Our food co-ops generally cheaper. Let's say you buy orange juice or fruit or vegetables. Is it cheaper than a typical supermarket?
It depends on the product, right? So, and thank you for doing that, Paul, because one of the things that we know, especially in this age of equity and empowerment, is, giving people and giving women the opportunity to be masters of their own initiatives and getting the credit is so important. So thank you for that. And shout out to Delia. This is her baby. This is her idea. And one of the things she also spoke about was this place being a meeting center, a place for people to gather. So when we see something like that, you're able to benefit from the community and the brilliance of the community. Paul, you know firsthand what Fairview does once they put their mind to it. Whether it's the community center or the daycare center, there's a lot of ingenuity and brilliance of that part in Greenburgh, and Delia's vision is one of community. It's one of empowerment, but it's also one where people, could converge. And I know that's very important to the community also.
And what's so great about this is people have been talking about the need for a supermarket for a number of years, and they've also objected to all the vacancies. Obviously, you have vacant storefronts all over the United States, especially with e-commerce and the pandemic. And this is an opportunity, instead of just complaining, for actually the community to take charge and say, we're not waiting for anybody else to solve our problems. We're going to do it ourselves.
Absolutely, and it's so forward-thinking. So kudos to you, for even getting behind this, because when you asked about the price of products, so we're looking to part of Delia's mission and NADA's mission is to really buy from local producers. So New York State is the third largest farming state in the country, and we really have an opportunity. Some products might be lower than the commercial stores. Some might be higher. It's similar to when you go to a farmer's market, but you have the benefit of local produce, potentially local meat.
Oh, we have to take another break, and we'll be back.
Okay.
With you. I want to continue our discussion on this co-op.
Okay, thank you.
Tasha Young. Thank you.
WVOX. Now back to the Greenburgh Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenburgh Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Hi, I'm Paul Feiner, the Greenburgh Town Supervisor. My guest this morning has been Tasha Young, and we're discussing a really exciting new initiative, setting up a food co-op in the town. We're working together on this initiative. Delia Marks came up with the idea, and the hard part is the implementation. One of the goals of this co-op is to also take people who are out of work, might be young recent graduates and help them learn how to start their own business. And is that something that's typically done, in co-ops? My vision is to work with the Theater Young Community Center and retired business executives, and then train people. So this way, not only would we be encouraging them to start a business, but we would actually help them step by step take the steps to launch their own businesses.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I knew when Donald Trump was elected president is it's going to be a very business-friendly environment. And, one of the ways and one of the missions that I think is before us is to really help people get from maybe a low-wage earning capacity to better financial independence. And business ownership does that. Business ownership does that. So we know that 43% of the unemployed or underemployed persons during the COVID-19 crisis were women of color. So this is not a women's issue or a people of color issue. This is an American issue, but like with all other issues, people of color and women usually have the hardest time to go about it, which is particularly a focus because a lot of women have children and are heads of families. So, by presenting local employment for people in the community, because, again, this is worker-owned, that is next level. That is 21st century thinking. And then to have the opportunity for that entry into being an owner or being a shareholder, if you will, in the co-op, to learn how to run a business and to, maybe branch off into other areas of business ownership, that's gold right there. And I know it's being done, but the way we're proposing to do it with your help and with your leadership and with Delia's vision and what I bring to the table, this is really empowering people to be more prosperous and to be more financially independent and to be really the masters of their own universe.
Now, does the co-op, concept, the participants will get to decide what type of business they want to run, or do we decide for them?
I think right now what I see happening in the Fairview area is there are many business owners, and they're doing it mostly in the e-commerce space, or out of their homes or out of their cars. And I think what we're going to find is, yes, number one, we need to address the food insecurity that is present because there's no supermarket there. But I know that we're going to see other businesses emerge and be strengthened because of this initiative. I know at least 5 to 7 clothing businesses that are successful, but mostly in the e-commerce space. So, and they're Greenburgh people. They're from the Fairview area, and they have these successful, burgeoning businesses to everyone else, but it's not localized. I also know there is a great beauty industry, business owners. So the way I see this happening is letting the community inform us on what it is that they specialize in, but also what businesses they want to have in the community that they're already participating in. I hope I answered that question.
You did. Now, we're having a forum on September 9th. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly. So we are in the process of really, recruiting members of the steering committee for this initiative. And September 9th is the grand opening of the farmers market that you and the board had passed. The farmers market, I believe, is going to be in the town hall parking lot. And on September 9th, after people are able to, experience this first of its kind farmers market and shop, then we're going to have a panel of experts who already operate food co-ops, who already are maybe from the funding, fiduciary side of it, funders, government people that support these initiatives, to really engage the community with education and recruit them to be part of this as either a steering committee member or an investor.
How long do you think it will take for us to actually start the business? Because we're just starting to plan right now, and it's obviously a lot of work and a lot of little hurdles to overcome. So, when would you think would be a realistic time?
I would love to see us be able to have some semblance of a food co-op in 6 months. And that's a very, preliminary goal, because I'm still learning from the experts who do this myself. But I think that we have enough bones and enough resources to be able to really see some kind of storefront in 6 months. We are heavily reliant on town government with the zoning board and with the town board to really help us identify location and be the conduit for grants and some of the business structure to complement this new business initiative. But I think we could get something up and running in 6 months.
That is really very, very exciting. Do you think that the religious community and the community center, do you think that we'll have a lot of support from them?
I'm very much hoping so. I know a lot of the religious communities have their own community development corporations, their own. I think that's what they're called, community development, which is their business arm of the faith-based entity. So I know that there's a lot of interest in making sure that people fare well, making sure that people are able to stay in their homes, making sure that they could afford to eat and pay for medicine. So I don't see why the faith community would not want something like this to happen. And as far as the Theodore D. Young Community Center, again, I've witnessed other maybe chefs or restaurant owners utilize the community center in a way that it's like a catalyst for them to let the community know that they have businesses, that they have products. And even for me growing up, when I see that, I knew as a young girl that was available to me. So I think the community center has the role in shaping young minds on what is possible and how to do it. So I don't see that changing.
And I should mention that I've nominated you for a position on the Theodore Young Community Center Advisory Board, and one of the good ideas you made during our campaign was suggesting that the community center do more foundation outreach. So hopefully, with exciting initiatives like this, there'll be more people will want to donate to the center. We have to take one final break, and then we'll be right back with Tasha Young.
Welcome.
Now, back to the Greenburgh Report on 1460 WVOX. Once again, here's Greenburgh Town Supervisor Paul Feiner.
Good morning, Westchester. I'm Paul Feiner, and my guest is Tasha Young. And Tasha and I are working together on trying to start a co-op in Greenburgh, replacing vacant storefronts with vibrant new businesses owned by local residents. And the local residents would get some training from the town and from retirees and be able to actually not only start their businesses, but own it and decide what businesses they would want. Tasha, do you think there's any grant opportunities available for this, or is this something that we'll have to just fund townwide?
No, I definitely think, and I actually know there are grant opportunities available for this. What we saw last year with the combination of COVID-19 and the economic downturn, and then the largest protest against racial injustice in the history, is that a lot of funders are interested in equity projects, and they want to help those that are most negatively affected from the economic downturn. So what that presents for Greenburgh is a different kind of opportunity for funding initiatives in the Fairview area. So traditionally, Greenburgh might not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but because of the affluence that we have in this beautiful town, we don't always qualify for government programs for low income or high crime. But what we saw last year is it's not necessarily the lowest income or high crime areas, but just areas or populations, if you will, that have experienced disparity because of who they are. So in Fairview, we have a lot of African Americans, African Caribbeans, and also newly nationalized citizens or immigrants. So those same populations have experienced great disparity during COVID-19. So the grant money that's available for economic recovery for those populations are available to Greenburgh, where in the past maybe it wouldn't be as available. Maybe it has been. I know the community center was part of a federal grant. So we're embarking on an environment like that again, like we did when the community center was first commissioned. So we have to make Greenburgh the first in the line for this funding because the window is open now, but it's not going to be open forever. And this is both with government financing and private financing. Bank of America has allocated $1 billion toward economic initiatives for people of color and for Black people. The same with City, I believe. And we're going to look into the private sector to fund initiatives that really empower communities of color.
So we really have to act very, very quickly on this. I know that we had a meeting yesterday, and you were you had offered to help us prepare like a handout, an information sheet that we're going to be circulating in the community about our September 9th meeting. After we have the September 9th presentation, what are sort of the next steps in terms of starting the co-op? Like, what is the roadmap that you would have if we want to have a step-by-step plan?
Yeah, after the 9th, so it actually starts before the 9th. In August, we're trying to get a survey out to the community to really, gain information from them, but also educate them with the FAQ sheet, what the worker co-op is, what the food co-op is, what Delia's vision is about, finding a location that's actually also a gathering place for maybe, book readings or, spoken word or something where the community can also gather and converge. So that's all through August, really fact-finding and educating the community. So by September, we have the players, if you will, in place that actually do this work. So then by October, we should really be in the application phase of getting moving from a steering committee to an advisory board on how this is going to operate, identifying investors. In the months of August and September, we should really be having a list of potential funders from the private sector and from the governmental sector. So by September, those mentors that you were talking about, they should be being identified in the month of September after that panel discussion. Investors should be identified We should really know the direction of the grants that we're going in to further shape what kind of co-op that we're going to do. Different grants have different expectations, and you put them together, and then you have what the co-op will actually be. So by October, the communities that we're serving, do we have money that serves the immigrant population? What does that look like? Let's talk about language access right now, right? So in August and September, we need to make sure those communications are in both English and Spanish. So in October, we really should have the foundation, Mr. Supervisor, for the type of co-op, who the investors are, who the business mentors are, and hopefully a location. And if we don't have that in October, we definitely have to have that by November.
Right, so we're going to have to go fast tracking on this. We set up another initiative that we've been working on. We have students from different school districts in the town, Elmsford, Greenburgh, all over, participating in the Zuckerberg Institute, and the students are actually helping small businesses using social media skills and helping them come up with a plan, so they could actually, be successful. And I spoke to the leadership of the Zuckerberg Institute a couple days ago, and they said that they have startup funds, and they were very interested in talking to us about the co-op. So I guess, is it a little too early for me to start outreaching to potential funders, or, sometimes I want to have everything started yesterday. That's my problem. When is the right time, in your opinion, to start doing as much reaching out?
No, I think that the time is now, because from my experience working in not-for-profits or for-profit ventures that need, startup funding, sometimes the funder determines, how the operation kind of operates. So the earlier you get out there and you see what kind of money is out there, and what their requirements are, what their, like how you have to report back to them the work that you do, that helps you know what you're doing. So
maybe what we should do is I'm just thinking out loud, is we should have maybe a pamphlet that we could start circulating to potential not-for-profits and private investors, just explaining how exciting this is, and we might want to even have a forum for the business community.
Definitely. And that's the thing, right? It's like some funders, they'll let you be as independent as you want to be. So you literally give them the blueprint and they're like, okay, angel investor, I want to invest. Some funders, they already have in mind what they want to give money to. So that's why it's very important to cast the widest net that you can, because we have an idea of what we want to do. And then the community is going to come and they're going to say, yeah, we co-sign this, or we want to change that. The funder also has a say if they have requirements for how they give money. So we gotta get that started right now.
Right. Just to sort of clarify, when we started this effort, the focus was on food, food and supermarkets, grocery stores. But as we develop this whole concept, it could really grow into many other initiatives. We have a Tesla, Tesla offices opening up in Greenburgh. We could actually have a car repair shop that could become a co-op.
Yes.
We ran out of time, unfortunately, but I really appreciate it, and would love to have you back, and thank you for your involvement.